The Exalarian Empire had ruled the stars for centuries, their war fleets spreading across the galaxy like an unstoppable tide. Every species they encountered had fallen without much resistance, crushed under the weight of superior firepower and merciless tactics. Their massive dreadnoughts, each the size of a moon, tore through planetary defenses as if they were made of paper. Worlds surrendered before the battle even began, their leaders begging for mercy. There was no mercy. The Exalarians did not conquer with the intent of ruling peacefully. They conquered to dominate, to extinguish resistance before it could even form. Every civilization they encountered had only two choices: serve or be destroyed. There was no third option. No species had ever stopped them. No enemy had ever made them hesitate. Until they met humans. When the Exalarian fleet detected a newly discovered system controlled by an unknown species, they barely considered it worth their attention. A single world, a handful of colonies, and outdated technology, nothing to be concerned about. The High Command sent a fleet, not their strongest, but powerful enough to wipe out any resistance. At the heart of the fleet was their flagship, Eternal Wrath, a warship that had brought entire empires to their knees. Grand Warlord Zell, one of the most feared commanders in Exalarian history, led the attack personally. He expected this to be just another routine conquest, another species added to their growing dominion. When his fleet entered the human system, he was met with something that made him pause for the first time in his long career. There was only one ship standing in their way. It was a warship, but compared to the Exalarian fleet, it looked insignificant. Alone, it had no chance against the hundreds of battleships, carriers, and cruisers surrounding it. Yet, it did not move. It did not flee. Instead, it broadcast a single message to the entire Exalarian fleet: leave now, or be destroyed. The message was met with laughter. A lone warship issuing threats to an empire that had never known defeat? It was absurd. Zell found it amusing, a desperate act of defiance before an inevitable annihilation. He ordered his ships forward, commanding the first wave to fire at will. The sky burned with energy blasts as Exalarian weapons roared to life, streaking toward the human vessel with the power to reduce entire cities to rubble. But something happened that none of them expected. The human warship did not explode. It did not even flinch. The Exalarian firepower, which had shattered planets, was absorbed effortlessly by the ship's shields. Zell frowned. That was unexpected. Before he could issue a new command, the human warship retaliated. It fired once, just once. A bright flash erupted from its hull, and in the next instant, an entire Exalarian battleship was reduced to nothing but debris. Silence fell over the command deck of Eternal Wrath. The Exalarians had expected resistance, but nothing like this. A single shot had done what no fleet had ever managed: cripple their forces in an instant. Zell's mind raced. This was impossible. No known species had technology capable of such power. His fleet outnumbered the humans hundreds to one, yet they had just suffered a loss that shouldn't have been possible. The warlord clenched his claws, refusing to believe that a single ship could pose any real threat. He ordered the second wave to attack, this time with precision strikes aimed at the ship's engines and weak points. But as they fired, the human warship moved. It darted through space with impossible speed, dodging weapons fire as if it knew exactly where the Exalarians would shoot before they even pressed the trigger. Its movements defied all known physics, twisting and turning in ways that shouldn't have been possible for a ship of its size. Then it struck again. Another pulse of energy, another Exalarian battleship turned into scrap metal. Panic spread through the fleet. They weren't fighting a warship. They were fighting something else entirely. Zell's mind raced through possibilities. Could this be a hidden superweapon? A prototype created by some unknown alliance? It didn't make sense. No reports had ever mentioned humanity possessing anything close to this level of power. And yet, here it was, standing against the most powerful empire in the galaxy and winning. The warlord knew they couldn't afford to underestimate this threat any longer. He ordered the full fleet to engage, demanding that every ship fire at full capacity. Hundreds of Exalarian warships opened fire at once, unleashing destruction unlike anything this system had ever seen. The space around the human warship became a storm of devastation. But when the light faded, the ship remained. Then came a transmission. A calm, collected human voice echoed through every Excelorian channel, reaching Zell directly. You thought you were invincible. You thought no one could challenge you. But you never met us before. Zell's blood ran cold. The voice carried no fear, no desperation. It was a statement, a warning. This warship, this single human vessel, was not an accident. It was a message. If one human ship could do this, what could an entire fleet do? The warlord's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but he knew what that would mean. The Excelorian Empire had never fled from a battle. To do so now would mean admitting weakness. And yet, as more of his ships fell, he realized the truth: they were not in control of this battle. The Excelorians were always the conquerors. They dictated how wars were fought, how civilizations were crushed. But today, for the first time in history, they were the ones being hunted. Zell had no choice. He ordered a full retreat. The mighty Excelorian fleet, the one that had razed entire star systems to the ground, fled before a single human warship. As they limped away, broken and humiliated, the final transmission came through once more. This is just a warning. Next time, we bring the fleet. Zell sat in silence, his claws tightening around the armrests of his command chair. The Excelorians had believed they were the dominant force in the galaxy, that no species could ever stand against them. But now, the galaxy had changed. The humans had shown that they were not prey. They were not another species to be conquered. They were a nightmare waiting to be unleashed. And the Excelorians had just woken it up. The Excelorian Empire had never encountered true resistance. For centuries, they had expanded without pause, crushing every civilization in their path. Their fleets were vast, their armies endless, and their technology unmatched. Entire star systems surrendered the moment an Excelorian warship appeared in their skies, knowing that defiance only led to annihilation. They saw themselves as the rulers of the galaxy, an unstoppable force destined to conquer all. When their scouts discovered a small human colony on the edge of the Orion sector, they barely considered it worth a full invasion. It was a single planet, lightly defended, with no sign of significant military presence. The High Command sent a battle fleet, not their strongest, but powerful enough to overwhelm any resistance in minutes. Grand Warlord HFY led the assault, certain that the humans would fall as easily as the others. But as the fleet emerged from hyperspace, they were met with something unexpected: a lone warship waiting in orbit. A single human vessel against an entire Excelorian battle group. It was laughable. And yet, the ship did not flee. It did not send a distress signal. Instead, it broadcasted a message directly to the Excelorian flagship. Turn back now, or be destroyed. Selvok sneered. Arrogance. Foolishness. A lone human ship challenging the might of the Excelorian fleet? He would crush them in seconds. He gave the order for his warships to advance, surrounding the human vessel from all sides. The Indomitable remained still, its weapons powered up but not firing. It was a last stand, he assumed. A futile attempt to buy time. His forces fired first, unleashing a barrage of plasma cannons and energy torpedoes. The weapons streaked across the void, lighting up the darkness of space with brilliant flashes of destruction. But as the smoke cleared, the human warship was still there. Its shields had absorbed the full force of the attack without even flickering. That was the first moment HFY felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The Indomitable retaliated. A single blast erupted from its forward cannons, striking the closest Excelorian battleship. The explosion was instantaneous. One moment, the warship was there; the next, it was nothing but debris. The Excelorian bridge fell silent. This wasn't possible. No ship, no technology known to the Empire, could destroy an Excelorian battleship with a single shot. The warlord's mind raced. Was this a superweapon? A hidden technological marvel humanity had kept secret? He barked new orders, sending half his fleet forward, surrounding the human warship from all angles. If one attack couldn't break its shields, they would overwhelm it with sheer numbers. Dozens of Axelorian ships closed in, opening fire with everything they had. The battlefield became a storm of energy blasts, missiles, and torpedoes, all converging on the Indomitable. But the human ship moved. It didn't stay still like other warships. It darted through the chaos with impossible speed, dodging attacks with precision no Axelorian pilot could match. It weaved through the enemy lines, picking them off one by one. Each time it fired, a Axelorian warship fell, torn apart by weapons beyond their understanding. The Axelorian fleet, which had expected an effortless victory, was now being systematically dismantled. Panic spread among the Axelorian captains. They had never fought an enemy like this. Their battles were usually over in minutes, their enemies crushed beneath their superior firepower. But here, now, they were the ones losing. Warlord Exelvok's rage turned to fear. He ordered a retreat, but the Indomitable didn't let them escape. It moved like a predator, cutting off their ships one by one. Explosions lit up the darkness as more Axelorian vessels were torn apart. The warlord could feel the morale of his troops crumbling. His fleet, his invincible fleet, was being destroyed by a single enemy warship. Then, a transmission came through, the same calm human voice that had warned them before. You should have left when you had the chance. There was no arrogance in the voice. No threats. Just cold, undeniable truth. The last of the Axelorian warships tried to flee, but only a handful escaped into hyperspace. Selvok's flagship was among them, his mind still struggling to process what had happened. The Axelorian Empire had suffered defeats before, but never like this. Never against a lone warship. As the eternal wrath limped back to Axelorian space, Axelvok knew the truth: this wasn't over. The humans had revealed only a fraction of their strength. The Axelorians had believed themselves to be unstoppable, the masters of the galaxy. But they had been wrong. There was something far more dangerous out there. A force that did not fear them. A force that did not run. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. The galaxy had seen countless wars, but never had there been a battle as one-sided as this. The Drexian Armada, the most feared fleet in the universe, had arrived in full force. Their warships, numbering in the thousands, blocked out the stars as they moved into formation around the human colony of Vesper 9. The Drexians had conquered hundreds of worlds, exterminating entire species without mercy. To them, the High Warlord of the Drexians, Korvac, stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing at the lonely blue planet below. His intelligence officers had assured him that the colony had no military presence, no fleets, no planetary defenses. Victory was inevitable. It would not even be a battle, just a swift execution. The order was given. The Drexian warships descended like an unstoppable tide, their weapons primed to erase Vesper 9 from existence. But then, something unexpected happened. A single human warship appeared from hyperspace. It was alone. One ship against thousands. The sight was almost laughable. The Drexians had fought the great empires of the galaxy and shattered entire armadas. A lone vessel, no matter how advanced, was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Korvac smirked. Perhaps the humans wished to surrender with honor. He opened a direct communication channel, fully expecting a plea for mercy. Instead, the human ship transmitted a simple message: leave now or face destruction. For a moment, silence filled the command deck. Then, laughter. The idea that a single human warship could threaten the Drexian Armada was beyond absurd. The order was given. A full barrage of plasma cannons, railguns, and missile strikes were launched toward the human vessel. The Drexians watched in satisfaction as the firepower of an entire fleet converged on one target. But when the flames cleared, the human ship remained unharmed. Its shields had absorbed the attack as if it was nothing more than a light breeze. Confusion spread among the Drexian officers. That was impossible. No ship had ever withstood such an onslaught without damage. Before they could react, the human warship Move.it struck with terrifying precision. A single shot from its main cannon tore through the nearest Drexian battleship, splitting it in half like paper. Another shot followed, then another. The Drexian armada, the mighty force that had crushed civilizations, was now being dismantled by a lone enemy. Panic took hold. The human warship danced through their ranks, moving faster than any known vessel. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, its weapons devastating, its defenses impenetrable. Ship after ship was obliterated before they could even fire back. The impossible was happening. The greatest fleet in the galaxy was losing. Korvac roared in fury, demanding that his ships regroup, but it was useless. Chaos had taken over. Drexian captains were desperately trying to retreat, their once unbreakable confidence shattered. The human warship was relentless, cutting off their escape routes, picking them off one by one. The battlefield became a graveyard of shattered Drexian vessels, floating lifelessly in the void. Korvac's mind raced. This couldn't be real. How could one ship, just one, turn the tide against an entire armada? The thought sent chills down his spine. The Drexians had always believed themselves superior, unstoppable. But now, for the first time, they faced an enemy they could not defeat. With his flagship surrounded, Korvac had no choice. He gave the order to retreat. What remained of the once invincible Drexian armada fled, leaving behind wreckage and bodies. As Korvac's ship jumped into hyperspace, he could not shake the last words sent by the human warship before they disappeared from view. Next time, there will be no escape. The Drexians had learned a terrible truth. Humanity was not weak. And this war had only just begun. For centuries, the galaxy had been at war. Empires rose and fell, civilizations burned, and battlefields stretched across the stars. But nothing had ever shaken the balance of power like the arrival of the Revenant, a human warship that defied all logic. It was unlike anything ever seen before, unstoppable, indestructible, and utterly merciless. Every time it appeared, entire fleets were wiped out. The most powerful warlords, the greatest admirals, and the deadliest armadas had all fallen before it. No one knew where it had come from. No one understood how it was so powerful. The only thing the galaxy knew was that once the Revenant arrived, nothing could stop it. The Exovari Dominion had learned this the hard way. Their fleets had ruled the galaxy for centuries, crushing every enemy with ease. But then, one by one, their warships started disappearing. Patrol fleets, outposts, entire battle groups gone without a trace. At first, they thought it was a new rebellion, some hidden force attempting to challenge their rule. But soon, the truth became clear. It was not an army. It was not a fleet. It was just one warship, the Revenant. The Dominion sent its best forces, its deadliest ships, and its most advanced weapons to hunt it down. None returned. Desperation grew. Fear spread through the ranks. The once invincible Dominion was being hunted. The supreme overlord of the Exelvari, Lord Vekroth, could not allow this to continue. He ordered a final battle to end the nightmare. Every remaining warship in the Dominion was gathered in one place, forming the largest armada ever assembled. If the Revenant was truly unstoppable, then they would test its limits. They would throw everything they had at it. They would end this ghost once and for all. The fleet moved into position near the ruined world of Chorus Prime, waiting in silence. Hours passed. Then, without warning, the sensors flared. It had arrived. The human warship emerged from the void like a phantom, alone against thousands. Its dark hull reflected no light, and its shape seemed to shift like a shadow against the stars. For a moment, there was silence then. The Dominion fleet opened fire. A storm of plasma cannons, missile barrages, and energy beams converged on the single warship. It should have been enough to destroy an entire armada. But as the firestorm faded, the Revenant remained. Its shields had not even flickered. It moved. The first Dominion battleship exploded instantly, its hull shattered by a single precise shot. Then another. And another. The impossible battle had begun. The warship moved like a predator among prey. It weaved through the fleet with impossible speed, tearing through the Dominion's most powerful warships like they were nothing more than debris. Its weapons were beyond comprehension, each shot calculated, each strike devastating. The Dominion fleet, the greatest force ever assembled, was crumbling. Panic set in. Captains abandoned formation. Admirals screamed for retreat. But there was no escape. The Revenant was faster, smarter, and far more deadly than any of them had imagined. Vekroth watched in horror as his fleet was annihilated. How? How could this be possible? No ship should have this much power. No single vessel should be able to destroy an entire empire. But then, as the darkness of defeat closed in, a single transmission came through an open broadcast from the Revenant itself. A human voice, calm and unwavering. You were warned. Now you will understand. And then, for the first time, the truth was revealed. The Revenant was not just a warship. It was a message. A creation born from the last survivors of a world the Dominion had long forgotten. A world that had once been peaceful until the Selvari had come to claim it. They had burned its cities, slaughtered its people, and erased its name from history. They thought they had won. But they had only created something far worse. The Revenant had no crew, no pilot. It was controlled by something else, something beyond artificial intelligence, beyond machine or man. It was a ghost made of vengeance, a mind forged in suffering, a force that could never be stopped. The Dominion had not been fighting a warship. They had been fighting the wrath of an entire dead civilization, brought back in the form of an unstoppable nightmare. As Vekroth's flagship burned, he realized the terrifying truth. There was no defeating the Revenant. There was no surrender. There was only the cold, merciless justice of those who had been wronged. And as the final explosion consumed him, the last thing he saw was the silent, unyielding warship moving on to its next target. The war was over. The Dominion was no more. And the Revenant. It would continue its mission until every last enemy was gone. The galaxy had long believed that fear was a weapon only the strong could wield. The great empires, the ruthless warlords, and the mighty conquerors used terror to crush their enemies. But no one had ever considered what would happen when the fear itself turned against them. The Gorlak Empire, an ancient and powerful civilization, had ruled with an iron fist for centuries. They had enslaved entire species, destroyed countless worlds, and forced weaker races into submission. To them, humanity was just another primitive race, too weak to resist, too small to matter. The Gorlak war machine moved toward Earth with absolute confidence. There was no doubt in their minds this would be another easy conquest. But then, something unexpected happened. The first invasion fleet never returned. No distress signals, no escape pods, no wreckage, just silence. At first, the Gorlak commanders thought it was a simple malfunction, a failure in communication. They sent a second fleet. This time, they received one final transmission before the signal was lost. A single, chilling message, "Do not come here." The warning was ignored. A third fleet was dispatched, stronger and better prepared. It never reached Earth. Sensors detected massive energy surges before the entire armada vanished without a trace. Fear began to creep into the minds of the Gorlak High Command. They had faced resistance before, but never like this. There were no battles, no survivors, no wreckage. It was as if something beyond their understanding was erasing their forces from existence. The supreme war leader, Korvash, ordered the full-scale invasion of Earth. If humanity had some kind of secret weapon, he would crush it with overwhelming force. Hundreds of Gorlak warships surrounded the planet, preparing for an assault. But then, without warning, their own ships turned against them. Engines shut down. Weapons systems failed. Crews screamed as their ships began firing on each other, controlled by something unseen. Panic spread like wildfire. Korvash watched in horror as his mighty fleet collapsed into chaos. He tried to issue orders, but no one was listening. Officers abandoned their posts. Soldiers turned on each other, driven mad by something they could not understand. The mighty Gorlak war machine was tearing itself apart. And then, a single human transmission came through clear, calm, and terrifying. You should have listened. It was then that the truth became clear. Humanity was not fighting this war with weapons or fleets. They were using something far more dangerous: fear itself. Somehow, the humans had learned to manipulate the minds of their enemies, to turn terror into a weapon more powerful than any army. The Gorlak had always believed themselves to be the masters of fear. But now, they were the ones running, screaming, falling apart. Korvash knew they had already lost. The war was over before it had even begun. The few survivors fled back to the Gorlak homeworld, haunted by nightmares of what they had seen, though none of them could explain it. The empire collapsed within days. The fear had taken root, spreading through every city, every colony, every mind. There was no invasion, no war, no battle. Just a single truth that echoed through the ruins of an empire that once thought itself invincible: do not come here. And so, the galaxy changed forever. The conquerors had become the conquered. The mighty had been broken. And humanity, the race that was once seen as weak, was now the most feared species in the universe. Not because of their weapons, not because of their fleets, but because of the one thing that no force in the galaxy could fight against: the fear that changed everything.